My father demanded my 5-bedroom house for my sister. I calmly told him he shouldn't worry too much about his golden child, because she isn't even his. The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning while I sat at my kitchen island, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my home. My father never texted unless he wanted something, so seeing his name on my phone screen already set my nerves on edge. We need to talk about your house. Family meeting tonight at 6. Don't be late. No greeting. No pleasantries. Just a command, as if I were still a child living under his roof instead of a 34-year-old woman who'd built her own life from the ground up. I stared at the message for a long moment before setting my phone down and returning to my coffee. The house he was referring to sat on 2 acres in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in our city. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a finished basement, and a backyard that looked like something from a magazine spread. I'd purchased it 3 years ago after my promotion to senior director at the marketing firm where I'd worked since college. Every mortgage payment came from my account. Every piece of furniture had been chosen by me. The down payment had drained my savings, but I'd done it entirely on my own. That evening, I arrived at my parents' house exactly at 6. The familiar colonial-style home where I'd grown up looked smaller every time I visited, though nothing about it had actually changed. My mother answered the door with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your father's in the living room with Vanessa," she said quietly. Vanessa? My younger sister by 4 years. The favorite child, the one who could do no wrong, the daughter my parents actually wanted. Growing up, the difference in how they treated us had been so obvious that even our teachers noticed. Vanessa got ballet lessons and summer camps while I got library cards and hand-me-down clothes. When she wanted a car for her 16th birthday, they bought her a brand new sedan. When I turned 16, they gave me a card with $50 inside. I walked into the living room to find my father sitting in his usual armchair, Vanessa perched on the couch with red-rimmed eyes. Her husband Trevor stood behind her with his hand on her shoulder, looking uncomfortable. Finally, my father said, glancing at his watch despite me being precisely on time. "Sit down. We have important matters to discuss." I remained standing. "What's this about?" Vanessa let out a small sob, and my mother rushed to sit beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. The performance was beginning. "Your sister needs help," my father announced. "Trevor's company is downsizing. They're letting him go at the end of the month." I looked at Trevor, who had the decency to appear embarrassed. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Sorry doesn't pay bills," my father snapped. "They're going to lose their apartment. They have 2 children to think about." Vanessa's kids were 7 and 4, sweet enough children despite their mother's influence. I'd always made an effort to be a good aunt, sending birthday gifts and showing up to their school events when invited. "Have you looked into other positions?" I asked Trevor directly. Before he could answer, my father cut in again. "That's not the point. The point is they need somewhere to live while Trevor gets back on his feet. Somewhere stable. Somewhere big enough for a family." The implication hung in the air like smoke. I felt my jaw tighten. "You have that enormous house," my mother added, her voice taking on a pleading tone. 5 bedrooms for just one person. It doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect sense to me," I replied evenly. "It's my home." "Family helps family," my father said, leaning forward in his chair. "Vanessa needs that house more than you do. You're single. You don't have children. You could easily find a nice apartment somewhere." The words landed like stones. I'd heard variations of this my entire life, that my needs mattered less, that my accomplishments meant nothing compared to Vanessa's existence. "Let me make sure I understand," I said slowly. "You want me to give up the house I bought with my own money, that I pay for with my own salary, and move into an apartment so Vanessa and her family can live there instead?" "Not give up," Vanessa said quickly, wiping her eyes. "We'd pay you rent eventually. Once Trevor finds something new." "Eventually," I repeated. "And in the meantime?" Silence answered me. They hadn't thought that far ahead because they'd never expected me to question the plan. "This is what family does," my father insisted, his voice rising. "When I was young, my brother needed help, and we made sacrifices. That's what you do for the people you love." "The people you love," I echoed. "Tell me, Dad, when was the last time any of you made a sacrifice for me?" My mother gasped as if I'd said something offensive. "How can you be so selfish? Your sister is in crisis." "Vanessa has been in some kind of crisis our entire lives, and somehow I'm always the one expected to fix it." I turned to my sister. "Remember when you totaled your car in college because you were texting while driving? Who paid for the repairs?" She looked away. You did, but that was different. Different how? Or what about when you and Trevor wanted that destination wedding in Mexico but couldn't afford it? Who paid for your flights and hotel? You offered, she protested weakly. I was guilted into it by Mom and Dad telling me what a horrible sister I'd be if I didn't help make your special day perfect. The memories flooded back, each one a small wound that had never properly healed. When you needed a cosigner for your first apartment because your credit was terrible from all those maxed out credit cards, who signed? That's enough, my father barked, standing up from his chair. We didn't come here to relitigate the past. We're talking about the present, and right now your sister needs that house. Then she can buy it from me, I said calmly. Market value. I'll even give you a family discount, say, 20% off the appraised price. Trevor's eyes widened. He knew exactly how much houses in that neighborhood cost. That's outrageous, my mother sputtered. You know they can't afford that. Then I guess they can't afford my house. I picked up my purse from where I'd set it down. I came here as a courtesy, but I'm not having this conversation anymore. My answer is no. If you walk out that door, you're making a choice, my father said coldly. You're choosing to abandon your family when they need you most. I paused at the threshold, considering his words. For 34 years, I'd bent myself into shapes trying to earn their approval, trying to be worthy of the same love they gave Vanessa freely. The realization that I would never be enough finally crystallized into something clear and sharp. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm simply declining to set myself on fire to keep you warm. I looked at each of them in turn. You'll figure something out. You always do. Walking to my car, I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. The calls started that night. My mother, crying about how disappointed she was in me. My father, leaving voicemails about duty and obligation. Vanessa sent a series of text messages that started with pleading and ended with accusations. I blocked their numbers after the first dozen messages. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into a major campaign for our biggest client, staying late at the office and volunteering for weekend strategy sessions. My colleague Jennifer noticed the change in my routine during a coffee break on Thursday afternoon. You've been here past 8 every night this week, she observed, stirring cream into her cup. Everything okay? I considered deflecting but found myself telling her an abbreviated version of the house situation. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression growing more incredulous as I explained my family's expectations. They wanted you to just hand over your house? She asked when I'd finished. The house you saved for years to buy? Apparently family loyalty means I should live in a studio apartment while my sister raises her kids in my home. Jennifer shook her head slowly. I have 3 sisters. We're close. But if any of them ask me to give up my house, I'd laugh them out of the room. That's not normal family dynamics, that's exploitation. Her validation shouldn't have mattered so much, but it settled something inside me. I'd spent so many years having my reality questioned by my parents that hearing an outside perspective confirm my sanity felt therapeutic. The weekend brought unexpected complications. I'd gone to the grocery store Saturday morning, my usual routine, when I ran into Trevor's mother in the produce section. Judith had always been polite to me at family gatherings, if somewhat distant. Now she looked at me with open hostility. I hope you're proud of yourself, she said coldly, abandoning her cart to approach me. My grandchildren are going to be homeless because of your selfishness. Several other shoppers glanced our way. I felt my face heat up but kept my voice level. Vanessa and Trevor's housing situation isn't my responsibility. They're family. You have more space than you could ever need, and you're letting 2 innocent children suffer. Judith's voice rose. What kind of person does that? The kind of person who worked 3 jobs to save a down payment. The kind who earned her own success instead of expecting it to be handed over. I gripped my shopping cart handle tightly. Your son is a grown man with a college degree. I'm sure he'll find employment soon. He has applications out everywhere, but these things take time. Time they don't have because you won't help bridge the gap. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a harsh whisper. Vanessa told me what you did at your father's birthday dinner. Cruel doesn't begin to cover it. Destroying a family with vicious lies just because you're bitter and jealous. The accusation stung more than I wanted to admit. Those weren't lies, and if you think they were, you should ask my mother directly. I did ask. She's devastated by your vendetta against her. Against all of them. Judith's eyes narrowed. You've always resented Vanessa for being everything you're not, warm, loving, a devoted mother and wife. You couldn't stand watching her be happy. I could have walked away. Should have walked away. Instead, years of suppressed frustration bubbled over. Vanessa totaled 3 cars before she was 25. She maxed out credit cards buying things she couldn't afford and expected everyone else to bail her out. She's never held a job for more than 18 months because she gets bored or decides her boss is mean. The words poured out faster than I could stop them. I paid for her wedding. I co-signed her apartment lease. I've given her thousands of dollars over the years that were never paid back. And when she needed something again, nobody asked if I could afford it or if it was fair, they just expected me to comply. Judith's expression hardened. So you're keeping score? How petty. No, I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference, though clearly nobody in this family understands that concept. I started pushing my cart past her. Vanessa and Trevor will figure something out. They're adults. They'll manage. And if they don't? If my grandchildren end up in some shelter because their aunt was too selfish to help? I stopped and turned back. Then I guess you and your husband could offer them your spare bedroom. Or is helping family only mandatory when someone else is doing the helping? Her mouth opened and closed without sound. I didn't wait for a response. The encounter left me shaking. I abandoned my half-filled cart and went home, suddenly unable to bear being in public. My dog greeted me at the door with his usual enthusiasm, and I sat on the floor of my foyer hugging him until the trembling stopped. That evening, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read Family History You Should Know. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The sender was someone named Margaret Sutherland. The message was brief: I'm a distant cousin on your mother's side. We met once at a reunion when you were about 12. I heard through the family grapevine about recent events and thought you might want to know you're not the first person Eleanor has treated poorly. Attached are some letters between your grandmother and my mother discussing concerns about how Eleanor was raising you versus Vanessa. Your grandmother noticed the difference too. She tried to address it before she passed. I thought you should know someone saw what was happening and cared enough to try intervening. Best wishes, Margaret. The attachment was a scanned PDF of handwritten letters dating back 21 years. I sat at my kitchen table reading them with tears streaming down my face. My grandmother, who died when I was 16, had written multiple times to Margaret's mother expressing worry about the imbalanced attention I received. Eleanor is so focused on Vanessa that she barely notices when our older granddaughter achieves something remarkable, one letter read. The girl made honor roll again, and Eleanor mentioned it in passing as if it were nothing. Meanwhile, Vanessa brought home a mediocre report card and Eleanor acted like she'd won a Nobel Prize. I've tried talking to Eleanor about it, but she gets defensive and changes the subject. I worry about what this is doing to the child's sense of self-worth. Another letter, dated 3 years later, I brought up the favoritism again, and Eleanor actually admitted she knows she treats them differently. She said Vanessa needs more attention, that she's more sensitive. But what about her other daughter? When does that child get to be the priority? I'm watching a bright, capable young woman learn that she doesn't matter as much, and it breaks my heart. Reading my grandmother's words from beyond the grave felt like being given a gift I hadn't known I needed. Someone had seen. Someone had cared. Someone had tried to change things, even if unsuccessfully. The dates on the letters showed she'd been advocating for me from when I was around 11 until just before she passed when I was 16. I wrote back to Margaret thanking her for the letters and asking if she'd be willing to talk sometime. Her response came within an hour, providing her phone number and suggesting coffee whenever I was ready. 3 days later, my Aunt Paula called. She was my mother's older sister, and unlike the rest of the family, she'd always treated both Vanessa and me with equal kindness. I heard about the house situation, she said without preamble. Your mother is beside herself. I'm sure she is. She called me hoping I'd talk some sense into you. Paula paused. I told her you were the only one in the family who'd ever had any sense. Despite everything, I smiled. Thanks, Aunt Paula. That house represents everything you've worked for. Don't let them take it from you. Her voice softened. You know they've never been fair to you, sweetie. Some parents have favorites, and your mother and father never even tried to hide it. I know. I'm proud of you for standing your ground. She hesitated, and I heard something shift in her tone. There's something else. Something I debated telling you for years, but after hearing about this situation, I think you deserve to know the truth. My stomach tightened. What truth? It's about Vanessa. Paula took a deep breath. She's not your father's biological daughter. The words didn't process immediately. I sat down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, trying to make sense of what she'd just said. What are you talking about? Your mother had an affair when you were 3 years old. It lasted about 6 months before she broke it off and recommitted to your father. He never knew, at least, your mother doesn't think he knew. But when Vanessa was born 9 months later, she looked nothing like your father. She had this light blonde hair and blue eyes when both your parents have dark hair and brown eyes. You remember the family photographs? I did remember. I'd always wondered about it, but children accept what they're told without question. Your mother confided in me years later when she'd had too much wine at Christmas. She made me swear never to tell anyone. Paula's voice carried an edge of defiance. But watching them treat you like you're disposable while elevating Vanessa to sainthood, I can't keep quiet anymore. You deserve to know why you've always been the afterthought. Does Vanessa know? I asked quietly. I doubt it. Your mother guards that secret like her life depends on it. In some ways, it does. Your father's family is very traditional. If he found out Vanessa wasn't his, that your mother cheated on him, it would destroy everything. We talked for another hour. Paula told me what she knew about the affair, a colleague from my mother's old job, someone who'd been transferred to another state shortly after their involvement ended. She told me about my mother's panic when Vanessa was born looking so different from the rest of the family, the scrambling to explain it away with recessive genes and distant relatives. After we hung up, I sat in my living room as the sun set, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. The knowledge settled over me like a heavy blanket. So much suddenly made sense. The preferential treatment wasn't just about personality or gender. It was about guilt. My mother had been overcompensating for 30 years, showering Vanessa with a love and attention that should have been divided equally, trying to erase her betrayal by making her affair's consequence the golden child. And my father, whether he consciously knew or simply suspected on some deep level, had gone along with it. Maybe it was easier to pretend everything was fine than to confront a truth that would shatter his marriage. Maybe he'd convinced himself that treating Vanessa better would make the doubt go away. Whatever the reason, I'd paid the price for their dysfunction my entire life. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made a plan. The next family gathering was scheduled for the following Sunday, my father's birthday dinner. My mother had texted me before I blocked her number, insisting I attend despite our argument. I unblocked everyone long enough to confirm I'd be there. When Sunday arrived, I dressed carefully in a navy blue dress and drove to my parents' house. The entire family had gathered, my parents, Vanessa and Trevor with their kids, my father's brother and his wife, and a handful of cousins. Aunt Paula caught my eye as I walked in and gave me a subtle nod. Dinner was awkward. Vanessa barely looked at me. My father made pointed comments about family loyalty throughout the meal. My mother kept trying to catch my eye with meaningful looks that I ignored. When dessert was served, my father's favorite chocolate cake, he stood to make a speech. He talked about family, about the importance of tradition, about how blessed he was to have such a wonderful life surrounded by people who loved him. Family is everything, he concluded, raising his glass. No matter what challenges we face them together. We sacrifice for each other. We put each other first. Everyone raised their glasses. I stood up. I'd like to say something, I announced. My father looked pleased, probably assuming I was about to apologize and agree to hand over my house. Of course. I've been thinking a lot about family lately. About sacrifice and love and what we owe each other. I looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. And I've realized something important. I've spent my whole life trying to earn a place in this family. Trying to be good enough, successful enough, generous enough to deserve the same love and respect that Vanessa gets without even trying. Sweetheart, this isn't the time, my mother started. But it's never the time, is it, Mom? It's never the right moment to acknowledge that you've treated your daughters differently since we were children. That you've expected me to give and give while Vanessa only takes. Vanessa's face flushed red. That's not fair. You're right. It isn't fair. None of this has ever been fair. I turned to my father. You told me last week that family helps family. That when you were young, your brother needed help and you made sacrifices. You acted like I was being selfish and cruel for wanting to keep the home I worked years to afford. You are being selfish, he said sharply. Maybe. Or maybe I finally understand that I don't owe you anything, especially not after learning the truth about Vanessa. The room went completely silent. My mother's face strained of color. What truth? My father asked slowly. I looked at Vanessa, who stared at me with confusion. Then at my mother, whose expression had gone from pale to panicked. My mother had an affair when I was 3 years old, I said clearly. Vanessa is the result of that affair. She's not your biological daughter, Dad. The chaos that erupted was immediate and overwhelming. My father's face went through several colors. My mother started crying. Vanessa looked like she'd been slapped. Trevor grabbed their kids and hustled them into another room. Relatives started shouting questions. "That's a lie," my father said, but his voice shook. "That's a disgusting lie." "Ask Mom," I suggested calmly. "Ask her to explain why Vanessa looks nothing like either of you. Ask her about the colleagues she was involved with when I was little." "Eleanor?" My father turned to my mother. "Eleanor, tell them this is nonsense." My mother couldn't speak. She just cried harder, which was answer enough. Aunt Paula appeared at my side. "It's true, Gregory. Eleanor told me herself years ago. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "You knew?" My father looked at his sister-in-law with betrayal. "All these years, you knew and said nothing?" "It wasn't my secret to tell," Paula replied quietly. My father's brother stood up from his seat, face flushed with anger. "This is a family dinner. Whatever issues you all have should be dealt with privately, not aired out like some trashy television drama." "Oh, now we care about privacy?" I looked at him directly. Where was this concern when everyone ganged up on me about giving away my house? That wasn't private business? He had no answer for that? His wife touched his arm, trying to get him to sit back down, but he shrugged her off. My mother finally found her voice, though it came out as a broken whisper. "Please, everyone just calm down. This isn't what it looks like." "Then what is it, Eleanor?" My father's voice could have cut glass. "Explain to me what I'm misunderstanding about you having an affair and passing off another man's child as mine for 3 decades. The cousins who'd been watching this unfold like spectators at a car crash began gathering their things, making excuses about early mornings and previous commitments. Within minutes, the dining room had cleared of everyone except my immediate family, Aunt Paula, and my father's brother who seemed too shocked to move. My mother stood on shaking legs, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streaks. "I never meant for any of this to happen. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake I've regretted every single day since." "Not regretted enough to tell the truth," my father said bitterly. "Not regretted enough to treat both your daughters fairly instead of trying to assuage your guilty conscience by spoiling the evidence of your betrayal. Don't talk about Vanessa like that." My mother cried. "She's innocent in all of this. She didn't ask to be born." "Neither did I interjected quietly. "But somehow I'm the one who's paid the price for your choices my entire life." My mother turned to me with something close to hatred in her eyes. "You've always been so quick to point out every little thing you thought was unfair. Always keeping track, always making yourself the victim." "Little things?" The laugh that escaped me was sharp and humorless. "You bought Vanessa a car and gave me $50. You paid for her college in full and told me I'd build character by taking out loans. When she got married, you threw her a $20,000 wedding. When I got engaged 5 years ago, you told me you couldn't contribute because money was tight. You called off that engagement," my mother protested. "Because I realized Nathan was controlling and emotionally abusive, and when I came to you for support, you told me I was being dramatic and throwing away a good man. You took his side over mine." The memory still burned. "Vanessa's been married to Trevor for 9 years, and you've never once questioned whether he was good enough for her, even though he's gotten them into debt 3 separate times with bad investments. That's not fair to Trevor," Vanessa said, but her voice lacked conviction. "None of this has been fair, Vanessa. That's the point." I grabbed my purse again, suddenly exhausted by the entire confrontation. I came here hoping for some acknowledgement of how unbalanced things have always been. Instead, I got demands and guilt trips. "So yes, I told the truth about your paternity. Maybe it was cruel timing. Maybe I should have found a gentler way. But I'm done protecting everyone else's comfort while sacrificing my own." Vanessa stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward. "This is insane. Mom, tell them it's not true." But my mother couldn't stop crying long enough to form words, and her silence spoke volumes. I picked up my purse. I came here to have one last dinner as a family. To see if maybe, somehow, things could be different. But I realize now that this family was built on lies and favoritism, and I'm done trying to find my place in it. "Wait," my father called out as I headed for the door. His voice had lost all its authority. "You can't just drop this bomb and leave." "Watch me," I replied. "Oh, and Dad? You probably shouldn't worry too much about Vanessa needing my house. I'm sure her real father would be happy to help if you can track him down." I walked out into the cool evening air, got in my car, and drove away. Behind me, I could hear shouting even through the closed door. The fallout was nuclear. My phone exploded with messages, but I'd prepared myself this time. I'd already spoken to my attorney earlier in the week, making sure my house and assets were protected from any potential family claims. I'd changed my emergency contacts and removed my parents from my life insurance beneficiaries. Vanessa called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "How could you?" she screamed when I picked up. "How could you ruin my life like this?" "I didn't ruin your life, Vanessa. I just stopped protecting everyone else's secrets at the expense of my own well-being." Dad won't even look at me. He packed a bag and left. Mom hasn't stopped crying for 2 days. Her voice cracked. "Trevor's parents found out and they're saying horrible things about our family. The kids are asking questions I can't answer." "Then answer them honestly," I suggested. "Tell them that sometimes families are complicated. That genetics don't determine love. That mom made a mistake a long time ago, but it doesn't change who you are." Easy for you to say. You're not the one whose entire identity just got destroyed. No, I'm the one who spent 34 years being treated as expendable. I'm the one who was expected to sacrifice everything I built so you could have an easier path. Again. The anger I'd suppressed for years rose in my throat. Did you ever wonder why I was always the one who had to give things up? Why I was the one who got the hand-me-downs and the lukewarm affection while you got brand new everything and unconditional love? That's not how it was, she protested weakly. That's exactly how it was, and you know it. You just never cared because it benefited you. She was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry Mom and Dad treated you differently. I'm sorry I didn't notice or didn't care. I'm sorry for everything. Does that fix anything?" "No," I said honestly. "But it's a start toward you taking responsibility for your own life instead of expecting everyone else to clean up your messes." "I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered. "Trevor's parents won't help us after all this. Our lease is up in 3 weeks. We have 2 kids and nowhere to live." For just a moment, I felt the old familiar pull, the instinct to step in, to solve the problem, to sacrifice my comfort for hers. Then I remembered every slight, every disappointment, every time I'd been made to feel less than. There are resources for families in transition. Temporary housing assistance, job placement services. You'll figure it out. "You sound just like Dad," she said bitterly. "No, I sound like someone who's finally learned to set boundaries. There's a difference." I took a breath. "I hope you and Trevor land on your feet. I hope the kids are okay. But I'm not giving you my house, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it anymore." I hung up before she could respond. Over the following weeks, pieces of information filtered through to me via Aunt Paula, who'd become my only remaining connection to the family. My father had indeed left, moving into a hotel while he processed the revelation. He demanded a paternity test, which confirmed what everyone already knew. My mother had apparently confessed everything: the affair, the years of guilt, the desperate attempt to make up for her betrayal by making Vanessa the favorite. The aftermath rippled out in ways I hadn't anticipated. Paula told me that my father's brother had confronted my mother about other incidents over the years where she'd been dismissive or cold toward me. Apparently, I hadn't been imagining the subtle slights and forgotten birthdays. Other family members had noticed too but, like Paula, had felt it wasn't their place to interfere. "Your uncle mentioned the time you graduated summa cum laude from college," Paula said during one of our phone calls. "Your mother barely acknowledged it at the family dinner that weekend. But when Vanessa graduated with a C average 4 years later, Eleanor threw her a massive party and invited half the neighborhood. I remember that weekend vividly. I'd worked myself to exhaustion maintaining my grades while juggling 2 part-time jobs to pay for expenses my loans didn't cover. When I'd walked across that stage with the highest honors, I'd looked out into the audience hoping to see my parents' proud faces. They'd been there, technically, but my mother had spent most of the ceremony on her phone, and my father had left immediately afterward for a golf game he'd scheduled. "She told me you didn't want a big fuss," Paula continued. "That you'd specifically asked to keep things low-key. Was that true?" "I never said that. She never even asked what I wanted." The realization that my mother had rewritten history to excuse her negligence shouldn't have surprised me anymore, but it did. Did she make up a lot of these excuses over the years? From what your uncle is saying now that he's actually thinking about it critically, yes. She had a story for everything. Why she couldn't attend your award ceremonies but never missed Vanessa's dance recitals. Why your achievements were downplayed while Vanessa's mediocre efforts were celebrated. It was always because you preferred it that way, or you were too independent to need the attention, or some variation on that theme. I found myself wondering how many other people had believed those lies. How many family members had thought I genuinely didn't care about recognition or support, when the truth was I'd simply learned to stop expecting it. Vanessa and Trevor found a smaller apartment across town. Trevor landed a new job, though with a significant pay cut. They were struggling but managing. The kids were resilient, as children often are. Meanwhile, my own life continued to improve in ways that had nothing to do with my family's implosion. The campaign I'd been working on won an industry award, resulting in a significant bonus and recognition from the firm's senior partners. I used part of the bonus to finally renovate my master bathroom, something I'd been planning since I bought the house. The contractor I hired, a woman named Ruth who came highly recommended, noticed the family photos I had displayed, or rather, the lack thereof. Most people have pictures everywhere when I'm working on their homes, she mentioned casually one afternoon while reviewing tile options. You've got a beautiful house, but it's almost like you moved in yesterday instead of 3 years ago. I glanced around, seeing my space through her eyes. She was right. I had artwork and decorative objects, but nothing personal. No family photos, no mementos from my childhood, nothing that connected me to my past. I'm not particularly close with my family, I said simply. Ruth nodded without prying further, and I appreciated her discretion. But the observation stuck with me. That evening, I went through boxes I'd kept in storage since moving in, the remnants of my life before this house. Old photos, school awards, letters from college friends, a journal I'd kept during my teenage years. Reading that journal proved illuminating in painful ways. My 15-year-old self had written extensively about feeling invisible at home, about watching Vanessa receive praise for things I'd been doing for years without acknowledgement. One entry stood out, got a 98 on my chemistry midterm. Mr. Peterson said it was the highest score he'd seen in 5 years. Told Mom at dinner and she said that's nice, then spent 20 minutes talking about how Vanessa scored the winning goal in her soccer game. Sometimes I wonder if they'd even notice if I disappeared. I'd forgotten writing those words, had buried that particular pain under years of trying to be strong and independent. Seeing it now, preserved in teenage handwriting, made me want to reach back through time and hug that girl who'd been convinced her own worth was somehow less than her sister's. My parents started marriage counseling, though Paula wasn't optimistic about their chances. Too much damage had been done, too many lies told, too many years wasted on a foundation of deceit. Your father asked about you, Paula mentioned during our weekly call. Wanted to know if you were doing okay. I told him you seemed happier than I'd seen you in years. Did that bother him? I think it did, actually. He expected you to be falling apart, to need the family you destroyed with your revelation. Paula's tone made clear what she thought of that expectation. Instead, you're thriving. It's forcing him to confront some uncomfortable truths about the family dynamics he enabled. I thought about that conversation for days. My father had expected me to suffer consequences for speaking up, for refusing to continue playing my assigned role as the accommodating daughter who never made waves. The fact that I wasn't suffering, that I was actually doing better than ever, challenged his entire narrative about family loyalty and sacrifice. As for me, I stayed in my 5-bedroom house with its hardwood floors and backyard garden. I adopted a dog from the local shelter, a golden retriever mix who loved long walks and sleeping in patches of sunlight. I got a promotion at work. I started dating someone I met at a friend's party, someone who thought I was remarkable exactly as I was. Sometimes I wondered if I'd been too harsh at that birthday dinner. If there had been a gentler way to handle things, a method that would have caused less collateral damage. Then I'd remember standing in my parents' living room, being told I was selfish for wanting to keep the life I'd built, and the guilt would evaporate. The truth was always going to come out eventually. Secrets that big never stay buried forever. Maybe I'd accelerated the timeline, but I hadn't created the situation. That honor belonged to my mother's choices 30 years ago and my parents' decision to build a family dynamic on favoritism and lies. 6 months after the dinner, I received a letter from my father. It came to my office since I'd changed my home address in all family records. The handwriting was his, careful and precise. I don't know how to begin this letter, it started. I don't know if you'll even read it. But I need to try. He wrote about the devastation of learning Vanessa wasn't his biological daughter. About feeling betrayed by my mother and angry at Paula for keeping the secret. He wrote about the marriage counseling sessions where uncomfortable truths kept surfacing, where he had to confront his own role in creating such an imbalanced family structure. Your mother explained that she overcompensated with Vanessa out of guilt, he wrote. But that's only part of the truth. I suspected, on some level, that something was wrong. The timing of the pregnancy, the way Vanessa looked, your mother's behavior during that time. I chose not to examine it too closely because I was afraid of what I'd find. It was easier to go along with your mother's enthusiasm for Vanessa than to question why she was so different with you. The letter went on for several pages. He detailed memories I'd forgotten, school events he'd missed, accomplishments he'd overlooked, moments where I'd needed him and he'd been focused on Vanessa instead. He didn't make excuses, just acknowledged the pattern. I can't undo 34 years of mistakes, he concluded. I can't give you back the childhood you deserved or the father you needed. All I can do is apologize and hope that someday you might be willing to have a conversation. Not about the house or about Vanessa, but about us. About whether there's any possibility of building something real instead of the broken dynamic we've had all these years. I understand if the answer is no. I've earned your distance. But I had to ask. Love, Dad. I read the letter 3 times, sitting at my desk while my colleagues bustled around me. The words seemed sincere, but sincerity without change meant nothing. I tucked the letter into my bag and went back to work. That evening, I sat on my back porch with my dog at my feet and my phone in my hand. I thought about everything that had happened, about the girl I'd been who desperately wanted her father's approval and then the woman I'd become who'd learned to approve of herself. Finally, I typed out a response and sent it before I could second-guess myself. I got your letter. I'm not ready to have that conversation yet, but I'm not saying never. I need time. I need to see consistent change, not just words. If you're serious about counseling and about examining your choices, then maybe someday we can try. But it has to be different. I won't accept being an afterthought anymore. I won't sacrifice myself for a family that's never valued me equally. If we rebuild anything, it has to be on honest ground with clear boundaries. Think about whether you can actually commit to that. His response came an hour later. Just 2 words, I understand. Whether he actually did remain to be seen. Whether my parents' marriage would survive the revelations, whether Vanessa would ever speak to me again, whether any semblance of family could be salvaged from the wreckage, none of it was certain. But my house was still mine. My life was still mine. And for the first time in 34 years, I wasn't waiting for anyone's permission to live it fully. That felt like victory enough.